Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have Reverend Dr. Bonnie Ring. Now, a lot of you may remember Bonnie when she was on our network previously. Well, we had such a great time. It was such an impactful interview. We had to invite her back on again. Now, when she was with us previously, we discussed her amazing book, Women Who Knew Jesus. Well, this time, Bonnie has written another book. This one is called Mary Magdalene, a disciple and friend of Jesus, both of which are available for purchase through Amazon, Barnes & Noble. But if you want to gather everything that Bonnie has in store, people, give yourself the best gift you could possibly give and head on over to her personal websites. One is drbonnieringbooks.com, and that's doctor, the abbreviation. Then we have womenwhoknewjesus.com. With both websites, you'll be able to find more information on Bonnie herself, more information on these wonderful books, as well as find the hyperlinks set up to take you to the purchasing pages. So one more time, that's drbonnieringbooks.com, followed by womenwhoknewjesus.com. And before we go any further, I want to take this opportunity and point out that Bonnie was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by one of the best publishing companies in the business. And people, you already know I'm talking about Urlink Print and Media. So listen to me. For my writers out there, if you have gone through your process, you have invested some blood, sweat, and tears at times creating your masterpiece, and now you've done it. You have gotten to the end of the road. You see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's so close you can reach out and grab it. Although now you need help moving the book you just finished creating. Well, if that's you, give yourself a fantastic gift. Contact Urlink and have their fantastic team assist you in your process. People, listen, I'm telling you, they're one of the best in the business to do it. This is exactly what they specialize in. So head on over to urlinkpublishing.com today and gather all of the ways that their fantastic team is going to help you do just that. And listen, it is an absolute pleasure to have Bonnie here on the line. And at the end of the day, she's the expert. It's her book. She's written it. She's done the research. She knows a lot more about it than I could ever articulate. So let's bring her here on the network with us to do so. Bonnie, first and foremost, welcome back to People of Distinction, and thank you again for being a guest. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I look forward to it.
Likewise. Well, we're looking forward to this as well. I think what you're doing here is just as impressive as your first book, Bonnie. I'm telling you, this has so much to offer to children, but adults alike as well. So thoroughly looking forward to it. Thank you for writing it. Thank you again for being a guest here with us to discuss it. Now, before we go into the book, Bonnie, I do think it's important for people that maybe missed the first interview. Let's give them a nice little refresher, okay? Tell us a little bit more about yourself. Who is Reverend Dr. Bonnie Ring?
She is many things. She has spent 50 years as a licensed psychologist, providing psychotherapy, including a 1 year as a radio personality, the first one in the Bay Area, to take calls from prospective listeners. So I have a doctorate in adult education. I'm ordained and as an Episcopal priest. And I first learned about the women who knew Jesus my first year of seminary when I was all of 46 years old. And we had to write 5 meditations on saints from the first 500 years for the first century. And I just popped up the question, is it okay if I do all 5 as women? And the young professor said, oh, sure, Bonnie, but I'm not sure you'll find 5 that qualify. You know how that motivated me to find
Challenge
5.
accepted.
There are at least 30 women saints in the first 500 years of the first century.
I love that.
That tells you a lot about me. I grew up in New York, but I've lived in California since 1965, up and down the state, and I now live in Half Moon Bay, California.
Bonnie, I love, first and foremost, thank you, for everything that you've mentioned. But that little piece that you were talking about in terms of doing this project and feeling almost a call to action, right? By the challenge of supposedly being able to find these women in the Bible, right? Mm-hmm. And I love the fact that you did it because we know representation is so important. And we live already in a very masculine-dominated world. But just because that's the case, listen, it doesn't mean that we don't have so many examples of extremely influential women. And I love the fact that you took it upon yourself to create this narrative, to do the research yourself and bring them to the forefront because they don't get the recognition that they deserve. And this is amazing. And if that's the precipice, if that's where we're starting.
What surprised me was that there are lots of books for adults about Mary Magdalene.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily agree with all of their conclusions, but there are lots of them. There are no children's books.
Mm-hmm.
This is the first one.
Yeah.
And Urlink has just agreed with me to seek Hollywood presentation on both books.
Wow. Well, there you have
it. And I
it.
think that would be just really wonderful.
Absolutely. Yeah. Because this is something that needs to reach the masses. And we know in literary form, yes, it's going to reach a good amount of people. But if we can get that in some way, shape, or form onto the big screen, we know that we are a visual community. And a lot more people will sit down through something they are watching rather than something that they are reading. Okay? Let's call a spade a spade. So if that is something that can come to fruition, this can move mountains in terms of the awareness that it's going to bring to everybody, but especially young women, to be able to see that, right? This is something, again, that is so, so wonderful in terms of what it symbolizes, what it represents. Bonnie, without further ado, let's jump right in. Mary Magdalene, a disciple and friend of Jesus. Tell us a little bit more about your book.
It describes their meeting, and it has wonderful illustrations. I worked with an illustrator with Diamond Media Press, and you really get to feel the formation of that relationship. You see pictures of Jesus as a little boy in his father's carpentry store, and then you see him being baptized and then calling his own disciples, and he loved children. He was very responsive to children. And Mary Magdalene was healed of some demons. There's only one gospel that says that, but there's a likelihood that she was so impressed with his ability to heal that she had an independent income, and she joined him and traveled with him for the 3 years of his ministry. And one of the things I love about the book is that I name her not only as a disciple, which Pope Francis finally acknowledged recently, but also as a friend of Jesus, as somebody that understood him, was eager to work with him, and understood the opposition of the Jewish authorities, so that when he was anticipating his death, while the men didn't believe him, she did.
Yeah.
Kind of end note of the book is she was a friend of Jesus, and he loved his friends, and you can be a friend of Jesus too.
Yeah. Bonnie, I again, this is incredible in terms of what you've been able to comprise. And I think I understand or can assume the answer to inspiration. But I'm not going to do that. I want to hear it from your mouth and really double down and impress the notion. Why did you feel compelled or inspired to create this book?
It's a nice story. In 1990, I gave my first retreat on 6 women who knew Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And I ended up having that become my major ministry, in addition to being a psychotherapist and an adult educator. And I had a class in seminary called The Gospel of John as Instant Theater, and I took on the role of Mary Magdalene in the vignettes that we created, and it just moved me. I felt a connection to her and a connection to Jesus that I had never had before. And so in the Episcopal Church, we don't really celebrate the Feast of Mary Magdalene, but I invited churches all through the Diocese of California to let me preach on that Sunday and introduce her over and over again to congregations. So she became a kind of personal role model and advocate for the things I valued. And it was during the pandemic, when everybody was locked up and sheltered at home, that I had free time to write. Mm-hmm. And it occurred to me that telling girls about Mary Magdalene might influence the rest of their lives. So I did it. And it was easy.
People, I'm telling you, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, DrBonnieRingBooks.com, WomenWhoKnewJesus.com are the places you have to go. The title for today's book is Mary Magdalene, a disciple and friend of Jesus, but make sure to check out her other book, Women Who Knew Jesus, because both are wonderfully informative. Both are wonderfully influential for men and women alike. I'm telling you, these are narratives that you want to add to your shelf, because they're, again, the resource to be able to reach out to it and raise your awareness, I think, is key. And I'm all for it. I know you are as well. Head on over there today. Pick up your copies. Bonnie, follow-up question, and really a curiosity for myself here, but throughout this process, we know why you felt inspired to embark upon this journey, but what would you say was a highlight for you throughout it?
Gave meaning to my life. I was remembering today that I heard God call me, and I didn't want to go to school again. So I became very active as a lay leader in the Episcopal Church in San Francisco. But the first national conference on HIV/AIDS took place at Grace Cathedral in San Francisco, and I was included as a group discussion leader and a panelist. My church was very proactive in assisting people with AIDS, especially men. And when I attended that conference, I experienced a confluence of all the parts of me. The psychologist part, the spiritual part, caring part, faith-driven part. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, God. So I launched a whole new career at 46 by going to seminary. And it's really... It's formed my life. I can't be separate from the women who knew Jesus. They are my role models, and I take them very seriously and like them. I like their energy, and I like their insistence on being heard, and I like the way Jesus accepted them, affirmed them, healed them, and talked to them as if he was their brother.
Bonnie, switching gears here. But I do want to make sure that, listen, you are someone that has been through the writing process a couple of times, and hopefully many more times in the future. But you understand better than most the process of creating your book. Because of this, you have wisdom to offer, and I want to now switch gears and pay it forward to writers out there listening in. But one thing writers and just artists across the board will be able to relate to and understand is the vulnerability that comes with sharing your work. So, Bonnie, how do you maintain confidence in your writing abilities when you put it out? Because, of course, you know, the moment you hit print, the moment you release that now to the world, you leave yourself susceptible to criticism. Well, how do you handle that and really maintain your confidence?
Well, you know, I had experienced more criticism in my writing ability at Vassar College than I've ever experienced as a professional writer. I was told that I didn't know how to organize and structure my writing because I'd never been taught. And when I left Vassar and took a job writing for Brides magazine about bridal dresses and bridal gifts. Mm-hmm. And then I realized that if you know what you want to say, it's easy to say it. So, especially the two books, they both came out of years of talking about these women.
Yeah.
And so it just comes right off the top of my head. The books write themselves. And so I think the thing I would tell writers is care passionately about what you're writing. And then just trust the Holy Spirit that between you and God and the Holy Spirit, you're going to put something out there that people are going to appreciate.
Listen, as we start to close out of here, Bonnie, the anchor, of course, was all about your book, Mary Magdalene. But I do want to give you this opportunity for those of our listening audience members that had missed the previous interview. You have another book released right now called Women Who Knew Jesus. We've mentioned it a number of times. Let's go briefly into it. Tell us a little bit more about it. Give us more of an understanding so we know what to expect when we pick that one up.
It covers every woman who encountered Jesus in the Gospels. Many of them had no name. The Syrophoenician woman, the Samaritan woman at the well, the bent-over woman who was crippled. They didn't have names because women only had names if they had a husband.
Yeah.
And each chapter of the book focuses on the interaction between Jesus and a particular woman. And it has reflection questions and guided meditations and the opportunity to read the story as it is in the Bible and then reflect on it and see its relevance to their own lives. So it's a very powerful book, and it's very different from most books because I was writing it as a retreat leader, inviting women everywhere to engage these women and learn about their lives.
People, there is so much to be gained here. And a lot that we've already mentioned, right? But one of the biggest things that I continue to come back to is representation and how important that is. But I think it's something that is so poignant that she said that, which is really, it's something that we still have in varying degrees happening today. In terms of the fact that Bonnie just said, a lot of these women in the Bible, in the Gospels that she was researching, they don't even have names. And they don't have names because women are only given names if they are married to a man, right? If they have this male figure, right? That is supposed to be now, that is their title, right? That is who they are now embodying. And it brings up something that I think is just it really has nothing to do with her books, but it just is something that I look at and is a distinct connection to how we view women in society, even today.
Oh, yes.
It may not be to that particular extent or degree, but it is astounding to me. And maybe it's astounding to me because I come from a family with some of the strongest women I have ever had the pleasure of knowing. I am married to a woman that is absolutely, what she is able to do and the power and strength that she possesses, listen, it is a sight to behold. Okay. And we are now, my wife and I are now raising our little princess, right? We have our little daughter and we are creating her in this masculine world, but we are building her up to be that force that her mother is, that her grandmothers are, that are her aunts and all of these other powerful women that we have in our family. But I look at what I listen to what Bonnie has just said, and it really is one of those things where, it's borderline infuriating to really stop and comprehend. Because I am one who firmly believes in the old adage of behind every good man is an even greater woman. Because I know not only from the women that I have in my family, but also the women that I've been blessed to know personally throughout my life. Listen, there's been a lot of times where I would not have been able to complete something or to become the man that I am today without the influences from the women that I've had in my life. And to disregard that is absolutely asinine. It does not make sense to me. But this is the world that we live in. But this is also why books of this nature are so crucial to add to your shelf. Again, impressionable for young women. Wonderful role models for them to find in both of these books. Mary Magdalene, a disciple and friend of Jesus, but also women who knew Jesus. To raise their awareness, but also for my men out there listening in, this is for you as well. Because you have a part to play in all of this. And if you can raise your awareness and understand the value of the women that have come before us, but also the women that we currently have alongside us, listen, man, we're going to move some mountains.
It made a huge difference for me because society in the 50s and the 60s was very anti-woman.
Yeah.
But I had a mother who worked. She was a businesswoman, and she was very successful. Mm-hmm. And it never occurred to me to become just a wife and mother.
Right.
But to engage, all the talents I had in whatever way I could.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Bonnie, that's why I'm saying your books are key because it's going to raise the awareness. If one little girl picks up this book and is able to read it and see these powerful women that have come before her, she'll then be able to translate that into she can be a driving force for her life, for her community, for her surroundings. Your books are the precipice of something magnificent.
The one thing I would like to add is that for 14 centuries after Pope Gregory the Great plated 4 different women who knew Jesus and called them all Mary Magdalene, he was talked about as a former prostitute, demeaned. And it wasn't until John the 23rd in Vatican II that the Roman Catholic Church finally said he was an apostle to the apostles. And I think that to me is a reminder that women can be downgraded for all kinds of reasons and in all kinds of ways. And when we resurrect them and see them in their fullness, attachments and admiration and admiration. And I did a TV show earlier this week. I guess it was last week. And the first thing the interviewer said was, "Well, Mary Magdalene was a prostitute." And I was taken aback, and I said, "That's not true."
Yeah.
And I told the story about Pope Gregory, and I told the story about the Vatican II, and he'd been raised by the Jesuits, and he still believed it. He promised me he was going to go talk to his Jesuit friends and see if they still thought she was a prostitute. I thought you'd like that one.
People, you know where you got to go. I don't have to say it, but I'm going to say it again. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Dr. Bonnie Ring Books.com, WomenWhoKnewJesus.com. You got to head on over there. Pick up your copies today. This is a movement. This is a lifestyle change. It comes in the fashion and in the form of a book, a literary creation, but it's so much larger than that. Head on over there, pick up your books, get lost in them, and you have Reverend Dr. Bonnie Ring to thank for all of it. Bonnie, this has been a true pleasure, an absolute honor. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
You're a pleasure to work with.